is Hidden Killers with Tony Bruschi. Here now, Tony Bruschi.
For years, she belonged to Rex Heuermann in a sick way. At least that's what everyone assumed. Her remains turned up during the same searches that uncovered the Gilgo Beach victims. Same desolate stretch of Ocean Parkway. Same plastic bags. Same shady scrubland where Long Island buries its secrets. When you find a dismembered woman a few miles from 4 murdered women, all disposed of, the same quarter, you draw a line between the dots. That's how investigations work. That's how pattern recognition works. And Rex Heuermann, the Manhattan architect with the planning documents and the kill lists and the DNA on the burlap sacks, he had a pattern. 7 women spanning nearly 2 decades. The methodical monster hiding behind blueprints and a suburban family. So when Tanya Jackson and her 2-year-old daughter were found scattered along that same highway, it made a certain kind of terrible sense. They were his. They had to be, right? But they weren't. And just adding another layer to this story, one that everyone wants to wrap up so neatly in a bow with the word Long Island serial killer Lisk or Gilgo Beach killer, as if it's just one, as if you whack that mole, problem's done, right? But as we know with whack-a-mole, you're not just hitting one mole. They just keep popping up. You hit one down, there's another one over here. That is really how you need to look at Gilgo Beach. Gilgo Beach, Long Island, it's one giant whack-a-mole game. Rex Heuermann is certainly one of them. Well, at least he's alleged to be. But there's more. This week, police in Florida arrested a 66-year-old man named Andrew Dykes. He's been charged with 2 counts of murder. Tanya Denise Jackson and Tatiana Marie Dykes. Or Tatiana, rather, Marie Dykes. And here's the part that rewires everything you thought you knew about this case. Andrew Dykes is Tatiana's biological father. Yeah. He allegedly killed his own 2-year-old daughter, dismembered her mother, dumped their bodies across Long Island like trash, and for 28 years, while the Gilgo Beach investigation swirled and Rex Heuermann's name dominated headlines, Andrew Dykes was living in Florida, free, unquestioned, corresponding or cooperating with authorities, at least according to police statements from just 7 months ago. Cooperating. So let's back up, because this story has been misunderstood for almost 3 decades. And Tanya Jackson deserves better than being a footnote in someone else's crimes. On January 28th in 1997, it was a Saturday, someone is walking through the woods beside McDonald Pond at Hampstead Lake State Park in Nassau County, New York, and they find something that doesn't belong. A green Rubbermaid container, the kind you'd use to store holiday decorations or old clothes. It's partially covered with black plastic garbage bags. God knows whatever you're going to find inside that Rubbermaid container covered with black plastic garbage bags along that stretch in Nassau County, it's going to be good, right? It's treasure. You're going to find something wonderful inside. Surprise! That's not someone's old Christmas decorations. Inside is a torso of a woman. No head, no arms, no legs below the knee, just a torso. And her left breast, a tattoo, a heart-shaped peach with a bite taken out of it, 2 drops falling from the core. The tattoo becomes her only identity. Investigators release the image to the public. They publish it in the National Tattoo magazine, hoping someone will recognize the artist's work, hoping someone will come forward and say, I know her. I made that tattoo. Of the heart-shaped peach with a bite taken out of it, that's me. I did that. Well, no one comes forward. And she's known as Peaches going forward, a Jane Doe with the nickname because of the tattoo on her breast. A woman reduced to a piece of fruit inked on her boob. The case goes cold. Years pass. The green Rubbermaid container and its contents fade into the filing cabinets of unsolved homicide, and Peaches vanishes or waits, depending on how you look at it. And December 2010 comes around. Police in Long Island are searching for a missing woman named Shannon Gilbert. She's a sex worker who vanishes after fleeing a client's home in Oak Beach. They've been combing the brush along Ocean Parkway, a barren strip of highway that cuts through the barrier islands, when they start finding bodies. 4 of them, all women, all wrapped in burlap, all within 500 feet of each other. Melissa Barthelemy, Megan Waterman, Amberlynn Costello, and Maureen Brainerd Barnes. They become known as the Gilgo Four, and the investigation explodes. A serial killer on Long Island, women who advertised on Craigslist, who fell through the cracks of a system that didn't look too hard. When they disappeared, the national media descends, Netflix makes a movie, and the searches continue. April of 2011, investigators are still walking that stretch of Ocean Parkway, still pulling remains out of the sand and the scrub. On April 4th, they find a skeletal remain of a toddler near Overlook Beach, a little girl wrapped in a blanket inside a plastic bag. She's maybe 2 years old. They call her Baby Doe. 7 days later, on April 11th, they find a plastic bag containing the arms and legs of an adult woman near Jones Beach State Park. DNA testing confirms what no one wanted to believe. The adult remains belong to Peaches, the woman whose torso was found 14 years earlier in Hampstead Lake State Park. And Baby Doe is her daughter. Some pieces of the puzzle put together in a metaphorical and quite literal way. Think about that geography for a second. The torso in 97, dumped at Hampstead Lake. The arms, the legs, and the child's body in 2011, found 8 miles away along Ocean Parkway. The killer didn't just murder this woman. He dismembered her, separated her from her child, and herself, literally separated herself, and scattered her across multiple locations over what appears to be years. Never left behind her skull. To this day, Tanya Jackson's head has never been recovered. Someone went to extraordinary lengths to make sure this woman could never be identified, and for 28 years, it seemed to work. The assumption, once Peaches and Baby Doe were found near Gilgo Beach, was that they belonged to the same killer. Same disposal corridor, same plastic bag, same anonymity of the victims, the same Long Island serial killer. Whoever he was had claimed a mother and a child. Kind of fit the narrative, not extremely well, but it's another woman. It's a new one for a kid. It made the horror coherent in a way. One monster, one graveyard, one investigation. But there were always details that didn't quite line up. Peaches was found in 97. The Gilgo Four were killed between 2007 and 2010. That's 10 years after. A decade-long gap where the presumed serial killer wasn't dumping bodies along Ocean Parkway, or at least wasn't dumping them where anyone found them. The method of disposal was similar, but not identical. Peaches was in a Rubbermaid container. The Gilgo Four were wrapped in burlap. And there was one detail that nobody talked about much, but it mattered. Tanya Jackson and Tatiana Dykes were the only known black victims found in the Gilgo Beach searches. Every other victim was white. It doesn't prove anything on its own, but serial killers tend to have patterns, and race is often part of those patterns. Still, for years, the working theory held Peaches and Baby Doe were Gilgo victims. The investigation into their deaths was folded into the larger task force. And when Rex Heuermann was arrested in July of 23, when the DNA from a pizza crust and the cell phone records and the hair matching his wife finally came and gave investigators a name to attach to the horror, the question became, was he responsible for Peaches and Baby Doe too? As recently as April of this year, police wouldn't say. Nassau County Detective Lieutenant Stephen Fitzpatrick stood at the press conference and told reporters, I'm not saying it is Rex Heuermann, and I'm not saying it's not. We are proceeding as if it's not, but keeping our eyes wide open. That was 7 months ago. 7 months of keeping eyes wide open. And now we know what they saw. Tanya Jackson was born on October 22nd of 1970 in Mobile, Alabama. She served in the United States Army from 93 to 95, stationed at bases in Texas, Georgia, and Missouri. Gulf War era, she was a veteran. After her service, she ended up in Brooklyn, living with her daughter, possibly working as a medical assistant at a doctor's office. She drove back in she drove a black 1991 Geo Storm. For those that remember those, she was 26 years old when she died. And she was estranged from her family. That detail matters more than almost anything else in this case because it explains why no one came looking. Tanya Jackson and her 2-year-old daughter disappeared from Brooklyn sometime in 1997, and nobody reported them missing. No frantic calls to police, no desperate searches, no family members posting flyers or calling hospitals. Tanya had fallen out of contact with her relatives, and when she vanished, the silence was total. She became a woman with no one to claim her, and her daughter became a child with no one to mourn her. That's how you stay a Jane Doe for 28 years. That's how your killer walks free. The identification came through DNA. In 2020, investigators submitted forensic evidence to Ortham, a lab specializing in genetic genealogy. Previous attempts to build a usable DNA profile had all failed. The samples were too degraded, the technology too limited, but Ortham scientists managed to reconstruct a comprehensive genealogical profile from what remained. And they sent it to the FBI's forensic genetic genealogy team. And by 2022, the FBI had a likely match. By 2023, Nassau County detectives were traveling to interview relatives and collect comparison samples. And by 2024, they had confirmation. Peaches was Tanya Jackson. Baby Doe was Tatiana Dykes. The family was notified. Tanya and Tatiana were finally laid to rest in Alabama. Tanya received full military honors, the flag, the salute, the recognition she was owed as someone who served her country. And in April of 2025, Nassau County held a press conference to announce the identifications publicly. They showed photos, they asked for tips, they offered a $25,000 reward, and they mentioned almost in passing that Tatiana's father was alive and cooperating with the investigation. He was not considered a suspect at that time. His name was Andrew Dykes. Let's be clear about what happened next because the timeline matters. In April of 2025, police publicly identified Tanya and Tatiana. They acknowledged that Andrew Dykes, Tatiana's father, was cooperating. They did not consider him a suspect. 7 months later, here, December 2025, Andrew Dykes was arrested near Tampa, Florida, and charged with 2 counts of murder. What changed? Well, the indictment sealed, so we don't know the specifics. But we know this. Investigators tracked Dykes down in part because of his last name. Tatiana Marie Dykes. The child carried her father's surname. That was one of the threads that led them to him. Once they pulled that thread, whatever they found was enough to charge him with killing both the mother and the child. He's 66 years old now. He's been living in Florida, apparently undisturbed for years. He appeared before a judge on Thursday and is currently sitting in Hillsborough County Jail awaiting extradition to Long Island. His attorney's name hasn't been released. The Nassau County District Attorney's Office declined to comment on the details of the case as of now. But here's what we can say. Andrew Dykes allegedly murdered his girlfriend and their 2-year-old daughter. He allegedly dismembered Tanya Jackson's body, separated her remains across multiple locations, and disposed of their child along the same stretch of highway where a serial killer would later dump his own victims. Whether that was coincidence or calculation or even him, we don't know. And whether Dykes knew that Ocean Parkway was already a graveyard, or whether he simply found the same desolate quarter that Rex Heuermann would discover years later, we don't know. What we know is that for 28 years, the assumption that Peaches belonged to the Gilgo Beach killer allowed her actual killer to live his life in Florida, if it's him, undisturbed, cooperating when asked, never once under serious suspicion. Again, innocent until proven guilty. I'd be interested to hear the actual evidence here, because as of now, we haven't heard jack. Rex Heuermann is still facing trial for 7 murders. Sandra Costello in 93, Valerie Mack in 2000, Jessica Taylor in 2003, Maureen Brainerd Barnes in 2007, and Melissa Barthelemy, Megan Waterman, and Amber Lynn Costello between 2009 and 2010. He's pled not guilty to all of it. His wife has filed for divorce and is selling the family home in Massapequa Park, the same house where prosecutors believe God knows what may have happened there when his family was out of town. His daughter has spoken publicly about her father, about the life she thought she knew. The trial will be big. The evidence, the planning documents, the post-event checklist, the DNA, the cell phone data is extensive. Heuermann may well spend the rest of his life in prison. But Heuermann, according now, didn't kill Tanya Jackson. He didn't kill Tatiana Dykes. And the years spent assuming he did, the years when Peaches was just another presumed victim of the Long Island serial killer, those years led Andrew Dykes disappear into Florida obscurity. That's the thing about pattern recognition. It works until it doesn't. You see 4 bodies in burlap along Ocean Parkway, and when you find the 5th body nearby, you assume it belongs to the same killer, right? You build a narrative that makes sense of this horror, and you stop looking for alternative explanations. Tanya Jackson and her daughter were never the Gilgo Beach's killer's victims. They were someone else's victims entirely. Someone who was right there the whole time, answering questions, cooperating with authorities, living free, while a 26-year-old Army veteran and her toddler rotted in evidence lockers as Jane Does. Tanya Jackson served her country. She came home, she had a daughter, and then she was erased. Dismembered, scattered, reduced to a tattoo on a torso in a plastic container. Her daughter was 2 years old. She never had a chance to become anything, to grow into anyone. She was Baby Doe for 14 years. A set of small bones wrapped in a blanket found in the same sand where grown women were buried by a monster who wasn't even her monster. The Gilgo Beach investigation revealed a lot of uncomfortable truths about Long Island, about how certain women are valued and how certain disappearances are investigated, but it also created a shadow that other crimes could hide in. Ocean Parkway wasn't just Rex Heuermann's dumping ground. It was a place where multiple killers disposed of women they thought no one would miss. And for 28 years, that assumption held. No one was looking for Andrew Dykes because everyone was looking for the serial killer. Now he's in custody. Now Tanya Jackson has her name back. Now Tatiana Marie Dykes is no longer Baby Doe. They've been buried properly, with family, with honors. The silence that protected their killer for nearly 3 decades has finally broken. But here's a question that lingers. How many other cases are out there? Folded into larger investigations, assumed to belong to one monster when they actually belong to another. How many killers are living quiet lives in Florida or Ohio or Texas? Cooperating when asked, never seriously suspected because their victims were found in the wrong place at the wrong time and got absorbed into someone else's story. Tanya Jackson was 26. Her daughter was 2. They deserve to be found. They deserve to be named, and they deserved an investigation that saw them as individuals, not as accessories to a serial killer's body count. It took 28 years, but someone is finally answering for what happened to them, and it's not Rex Heuermann. If you think of this today, it's running through my mind. This happened in 1997. So, yeah, that's what I thought. I want to make sure my math was right there. Simple math, but I want to make sure it was right. Tatiana would be 30 years old today. I mean, think of that. If you're listening to this, you may be easily younger than her, and you're thinking of this 2-year-old. She'd be a 30-year-old woman today. Life stolen by another monster. It's always important, though, to make sure that we get all the monsters, not just the loudest ones. Give me your thoughts in the comment section on YouTube. If you're not already there, search Hidden Killers with Tony Bruschi. Greatly appreciate your thoughts on this case. Hit subscribe while you are there. And if you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts, or you use Apple Podcasts at any point in your day, please give us a review on Apple Podcasts. Search Hidden Killers with Tony Bruschi and leave us a review there. We'd really appreciate that. Helps other folks find out about our commentaries and our research and our reporting, and your kind words do help a lot. So if you wouldn't mind Apple Podcasts review there, thank you for your time on that. Until next time, my name is Tony Bruschi. We'll talk again.
Want more on this case and others? Then press subscribe now and don't miss a moment of true crime coverage from Tony Bruschi and the Hidden Killers podcast.